Good evening. Can you guys hear me? The last presentation I saw reminded me of my son who early morning gets up and plays Roblox. You guys know what is Roblox, right? It's a video gaming device where you build things. So I'm seeing the reference of how gaming is coming into building and play is coming into a serious work. So there will be a time, which I'm assuming, where play and serious work will almost intermingle with each other. My name is Vishal Kapoor. I'm from Future Group. You guys have heard of Future Group? You guys have heard of Big Bazaar? How many have visited Big Bazaar? Maybe some activity happens in the crowd. That's it? Okay. Maybe I need to try out more. So this is our, we call it Sone Ki Chidiya, basically. The Sone Ki Chidiya is taken as a symbolism from the golden period, and how we want to contribute into our economy and turn that economy into a golden economy once again. So we take the symbolism. In the group, we take symbolism, we take philosophy, we take psychology, we take anthropology very seriously. And that becomes the basis of our design. When in the earlier presentations we heard a voting where how many engineers and how many designers, I got a bit nervous, but because I'm in a space which was between design and engineering. It's neither design nor engineering. I'll tell you how. And my reference today is not going to be as much as a technical jargon as you guys have gone throughout the day. I'm sure your heads must be completely full of all the technical jargons you've heard throughout. My reference is going to be more about how technology helps in empowering design, and thereby how design can become the culture of the organization. And that's something which we've tried to do. We've been fairly successful in the group. I've been with the group for about 17 years now. It's like I'm the old tree out there. But in these 17 years, we've seen a lot of ups and downs. We've seen in and out of trends. But one thing I've seen constantly is our ability to change, our ability to go with the flow, our ability to design and redesign and redesign. Right? So that's the culture which we want to propagate. So obviously my topic is around catalyzing design culture. Revit has been a slightly nascent stage for us. We inculcated about 1.5 years back. We had always worked on AutoCADs. I'm a great fan of sketching. I love sketching because I feel the human expression comes out the maximum in sketching. And my relevance in design is not about what you design. It's about how you start the point of design. You reach a stage when you make something. What makes you make something, right? It's the background to it. And that's what, as a culture, when I talk about subjects like philosophy, anthropology, those are the enriching subjects which get into that. So any architect out here or any architects out here who are interested in the field of retail, retail is not literally construction. Retail is like a story. Retail is a mix of construction, media, play, interior, architecture, business, marketing. It's a huge amount of hodgepodge of things. So people who want to join retail in design and engineering need to be aware about these terms. Otherwise, you would be sitting in one corner with an AutoCAD or a 3D Revit in your hand and trying to inculcate some information. This is something which we wrote about a year back, right? You guys have heard some, I'm sure some of you must have heard about Tathastu, which is a new brand which we want to it's the digital side of the organization. We have consciously now agreed to the fact, we used to contradict it a lot earlier, but now we've consciously agreed that digital is something which we cannot let go. Digital is something which has to become a part of our growing culture. So about 2 years back, we inculcated this whole thing of digital into the organization, the whole thing of data science, whole thing of social media marketing, whole thing about Revit, in fact, at the same point. And Tathastu as an organization, a separate organization came up. I think I don't need to go through it, but it's a very beautiful way of speaking, where we are all heading into as a culture, right? So it's high time that we come together and invent the new. That's the basic philosophy we've come across in the group now. This is what our background is. We do about 2 million interactions every day. This is the customer touch base with us. We have about 600 million footfalls. We've got about 2,000 groups, group outlets, different sizes. ranging from 800 square feet to about 3.5, 4 lakh square feet across, and ranging across economic levels, whether it is KB's fair price, whether it is a central, whether it's a cover story. It sort of services all kinds of backgrounds and across 400 cities and towns. These are the 4 verticals which we go through. I shall quickly go through them. Retail, you all know, you must have heard about the brand FBB, you must have heard about Central, you must have heard about Hometown. So we are across. Our idea is that anywhere the customer touch bases with a certain fulfillment of the life cycle or a lifestyle, we should be there. So if you want clothes, we are there. If you want furniture, we are there. You want food, we are there. You want food which is of a basic variety, or you want food which is gourmet, we are there. This is our FMCG segment. Various brands which we sell within our big bazaars. These are the fashion brands. We've got about 35, 40 brands across. And of course, we are also into home with both our private brands as well as the service points, which is the Hometown. That's the first big bazaar we opened up. When we talk about architecture, retail design, as I again said, we do not follow the norms of a Western model. We do not follow a big box retail, because we believe in India, people think, act, react in a very different way. In the theory, butt brush, you guys have heard the word butt brush? The butt brushes against somebody. It's a big irritant in the Western world, right? But in India, tell me which human being has not had a butt brush, right? Whether you are at the airports, whether you are at the chai joints outside, you will always, and you are comfortable with that. So we inculcated those kind of insights. We used to have a term called Lakshman Rekha, which means when I am entering into a retail, I should not feel that I'm entering into an exclusive space, right? Even today, I'm sure some of us, when we get into a big store which is air-conditioned, clean, we get a bit of inhibition in our mind. We start thinking, should I enter? Would it be expensive? That's the Lakshman Rekha which we wanted to break, or we wanted to rub off. That's where we also tried the thing of democratizing design as much as possible. That's our current store in Bandra. It's called Food Hall, and that's the case study I've got for you. So design has always been highly relevant subject for us, because we believe that design influences the way we live. And our living, it becomes our habit. You know about Surya Namaskar, right? What's Surya Namaskar? You take your hands and you throw water towards the sun. Now, it's not a religious ceremony. It's a ritual. How did that ritual come across? It became a habit at some point in the ancient times where it had a bit of science and art linked to it. And because everybody started doing it, it became a part of the ritualistic tradition. Because it became a ritual, it became a part of our culture. That's how we take design that's how we take things. So when you look at habits, they become our rituals. We've started this very funny, not a funny one, but we've started a habit where every security guard has to say namaskar to the customers who enter. I'm sure you must have experienced that, right? That habit is a very hardcore symbolism of the Indian culture, which means that I acknowledge your presence and acknowledge you to come inside. In a funny way, McDonald's also has started doing that, and there are some other organizations who've also picked that up. So that's why we place a huge amount of relevance to design, to culture. These are the words which resonate again and again in the organization, because design shapes the future. And I strongly feel that design also has shaped the future group. This is what we believe design is all about, right? My engineering friends should not think engineering is not important. Engineering is a part of design. Design is a part of engineering, right? And we don't take design as some aesthetic sense of making a beautiful wall, with some flowers on it. We look at design as an expression of business which has to connect with the clients. Clients means the customers. So for us, design is a binding thought. It's a binding thought between business, between culture, and between technology. And technology is a very simple device for us. It reduces friction in time, distance, effort, and hopefully cost. This is where Revit was introduced in my department, which basically looks into design and design thinking. By the way, when people ask me, what do you do? And I tell them I do design thinking, they say, oh, you are an interior designer. I said, no. So you're a fashion designer? No. You're an architect? No. But we take design as something, as I said, in a much more larger sense. So when I say I design the business, I design the next financial year. It means I'm taking in collaboration everything which I have to do to reach that stage of designing that new number. Customers, stakeholders, business, the stores, the operations, everything I have to consider. The more I consider it cohesively, the more I know that I have designed. If I have not considered one of them, that means I've left out and I've constructed something. So there's a difference between construction and design. Design, I always believe, is much more holistic than anything else. This you guys all know, right? I mean, 1850s, early 19th century, when the graph just zoomed up. And we see this zooming up or this going up constantly now. We've seen, I didn't hear about AI, VR about 5 or 6 years back. But since last 3, 4, 5 years, in today, like it was full of jargons of AI, VR, we are going to see what we talk in a more realistic sense in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm hoping that in retail, we are able to catch it up as designers. This is exactly what happens in the BIM. Right? You see the infusion of how digital comes into the construction and operation space. This is what our needs started from. We used to work on AutoCAD, we used to work on sketches, right? But we wanted a better mind-to-market speed. We wanted more accuracy. We wanted, and these are typical business problems. Imagine if you're applying this into a store design, maybe I'm thinking wild, maybe tomorrow you might have to apply the same philosophy in business, right? So there are, because technology tomorrow would infuse into everything. Cost sensitivity and the need for standardization. We open about 6 to 7 stores every month. Each store is averaging about 50,000 square feet. So that's a pretty large number considering the Indian standards. And there are about think, act, react in a very different way. In the theory, butt brush, you guys have heard the word butt brush? The butt brushes against somebody. It's a big irritant in the Western world, right? But in India, tell me which human being has not had a butt brush, right? Whether you are at the airports, whether you are at the chai joints outside, you will always, and you are comfortable with that. So we inculcated those kind of insights. We used to have a term called Lakshman Rekha, which means when I am entering into a retail, I should not feel that I'm entering into an exclusive space, right? Even today, I'm sure some of us, when we get into a big store which is air-conditioned, clean, we get a bit of an inhibition in our mind. We start thinking, should I enter? Would it be expensive? That's the Lakshman Rekha which we wanted to break or we wanted to rub off. That's where we also tried the thing of democratizing design as much as possible. That's our current store in Bandra. It's called Food Hall, and that's the case study I've got for you. So design has always been highly relevant subject for us because we believe that design influences the way we live. And our living, it becomes our habit. You know about Surya Namaskar, right? What's Surya Namaskar? You take your hands and you throw water towards the sun. Now, it's not a religious ceremony. It's a ritual. How did that ritual come across? It became a habit at some point in the ancient times where it had a bit of science and art linked to it. And because everybody started doing it, it became a part of the ritualistic tradition. Because it became a ritual, it became a part of our culture. That's how we take design as, that's how we take things. So when you look at habits, they become our rituals. We've started this very funny, not a funny one, but we've started a habit where every security guard has to say namaskar to the customers who enter. I'm sure you must have experienced that, right? That habit is a very hardcore symbolism of the Indian culture, which means that I acknowledge your presence and acknowledge you to come inside. In a funny way, McDonald's also has started doing that, and there are some other organizations who've also picked that up. So that's why we place a huge amount of relevance to design, to culture. These are the words which resonate again and again in the organization because design shapes the future. And I strongly feel that design also has shaped the future group. This is what we believe design is all about, right? My engineering friends should not think engineering is not important. Engineering is a part of design. Design is a part of engineering, right? And we don't take design as some aesthetic sense of making a beautiful wall, with some flowers on it. We look at design as an expression of business which has to connect with the clients. Clients means the customers. So for us, design is a binding thought. It's a binding thought between business, between culture, and between technology. And technology is a very simple device for us. It reduces friction in time, distance, effort. and hopefully cost. This is where Revit was introduced in my department, which basically looks into design and design thinking. By the way, when people ask me, what do you do? And I tell them I do design thinking, they say, oh, you are an interior designer. I said, no. So you're a fashion designer? No. You're an architect? No. But we take design as something, as I said, in a much more larger sense. So when I say I design the business, I design the next financial year, it means I'm taking in collaboration everything which I have to do to reach that stage of designing that new number. Customers, stakeholders, business, the stores, the operations, everything I have to consider. The more I consider it cohesively, the more I know that I have designed. If I have not considered one of them, that means I've left out and I've constructed something. So there's a difference between construction and design. Design, I always believe, is much more holistic than anything else. This you guys all know, right? I mean, 1850s, early 19th century, when the graph just zoomed up. And we see this zooming up or this going up constantly now. We've seen, I didn't hear about AI, VR about 5 or 6 years back. But since last 3, 4, 5 years, in today, like it was full of jargons of AI, VR, we are going to see what we talk in a more realistic sense in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm hoping that in retail, we are able to catch it up as designers. This is exactly what happens in the BIM, right? You see the infusion of how digital comes into the construction and operation space. This is what our needs started from. We used to work on AutoCAD, we used to work on sketches, right? But we wanted a better mind-to-market speed. We wanted more accuracy. We wanted, and these are typical business problems. Imagine if you're applying this into a store design, maybe I'm thinking wild, maybe tomorrow you might have to apply the same philosophy in business, right? So there are, because technology tomorrow would infuse into everything. Cost sensitivity and the need for standardization. We open about 6 to 7 stores every month. Each store is averaging about 50,000 square feet. So that's a pretty large number considering the Indian standards. And there are about 150 people who directly are involved, and then there are rest who get influenced by it. And this is the context which we set for BIM inside our organization. We start with a conceptual design. If I go a step before conceptual design, there's a lot of research. What kind of research? Qualitative, quantitative. Once we reach a certain thought saying, yes, I think this research gives us some idea about what we should build, that's where we get into the conceptual design, and then the circle starts till the time we reach the store opening stage. Store opening stage, the child is born. Now you've got to take care of it. How that child gets rechristened, renovated, and refreshed I think about every 3 to 4 year cycle. This is our growth, or this is our adoption of BIM in the organization. I must say Capricorn, who's the service partner, they had a lot of role to play in inculcation of this. We were, when I say we, I mean my team, was initially quite resistant about this because that means you have to relearn the whole graph again. Right? People who know AutoCAD may or may not know Revit. In our case, nobody knew Revit. So it was almost like a 6 to 9 month schooling inside the organization where Capricorn played a good role. While all this was going on, I had only one thought in mind: how do I empower design and design thinking? Not specifically a designer, that might be a wrong word, but design thinking. How do I do that? Because if my whole organization thinks design, it thinks of sensitivity, it thinks of empathy, it thinks of customers. So the customer centricity automatically starts coming in. This was the long journey of understanding and knowing Revit. Today, all the big bazaars which you see are through Revit. It's almost about 180 to 40 days. We are trying one thing which is seemingly interesting with my CFO, with my group CFO. We have Central, which is the rental model. Right? You've been to Central department stores? Only one? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so Central is basically a model where about 200, 250 brands are rented a space. When I say rented, it could be based on margins, it could be based on direct rent, it could be even on consignment. These spaces, about 200, 250 square feet, are constantly changing. The funny part is when we look at productivity in retail, we look at per square feet, right? We all say per square feet cost, per square feet productivity. Whereas the investments happen in per cubic, which means you are actually creating a box and everything is going into that floor, wall, ceiling. All of them have been invested. In that invested box, you also have energy consumption constantly happening. You have a wear and tear constantly happening. You have a manpower recruitment constantly there. So the whole measurement of retail productivity, somehow I personally feel, I might be wrong, is really on a wrong parameter. It's on a parameter of per square feet, whereas it should be per cubic feet. Now, we are trying that model where if I can create these blocks of Revit within the department store, which means I create 200 blocks, one for each brand, and I can play around in some way where I can know the input cost and I can know the output cost. I can know how much I've invested, how much that brand has given me in returns, what's the IRR, and based on that, can I push that brand left, right, or take it out, or maybe increase the space. If I'm able to bring that dynamism into my retail format through this visual method, and I'm saying deliberately visual because then all kinds of people, including my security guard who's standing outside, even he could understand what's happening, to that level of simplicity, then I'm able to actually pass the message in a much more stronger manner. So we are trying this out where we can try we are doing one store, it started about 3 months back. If I can link my rent model to my capital investment model to my space model, and if these three can move around, let's hope, let's hope. The second thing is the better sense of articulation. One thing I've realized that when I'm giving the designer a better tool, his confidence levels go up. And if he's got a more forward-looking tool, his confidence levels shoot up. So there were designers in my team who would not even express, and you must be aware that designers generally don't express. I mean, that's one of my problems. But if they express because they're able to visualize everything. You're able to walk through everything. And because they're able to do this at the planning stage, I would put about 60% energy on planning and 40% on execution. And in that 60%, I would collaborate with as many people as possible. So the CEOs are involved, the operations teams are involved, the administration is involved, the maintenance team, the facilities team is involved. Why they're involved? Because we want them to collaborate to reach, because my idea is already done. Now it's the expression of the idea. In the expression of idea, I want them to be involved. So they have been able to take leadership in that. If the designer is sitting in the center of the table and these 5 guys are sitting around it, that means the designer actually is becoming more important. Right? And that's the role which I want to build more and more into the designer's life. We've also done inventory and cost. One of the things which happens in retail is the play of margins, which means the amount of you have invested, you need to be very, very sure. I was just talking to, we call him Kishorji. I was talking to him in the morning, we were discussing one store, and we said, we got to really bring the cost down of this store. We would love to do the store, but we need to do the cost down. So initially, we take a bet. So if the cost is about 10,000 rupees a square feet, we take a bet saying, let's get it down to 7,000. Now, we will decide how that will happen. We will not get into the logic of maybe we will do, maybe we will not do. And that's one of the cultures of the group. We have never said no. You will not find a future group employee saying no. He will always say yes, and he will always say, I will try. He might fail, but he will fail in the journey of I will try. So cost is one part which is very sensitive to us. We have given each and every designer accountability of cost. Cost does not rest on sourcing. Cost does not rest on execution. Cost rests on designer. Because we feel a designer makes a line, the cost comes, a designer rubs the line, the cost goes off. It's as simple as that. So the designer has to make the line in the right way to have a control over the costs. If he is able to do that, rest all the costs, which we call the value engineering, which we call the sourcing, the commercials, negotiating, they're all peripheral costs. Right? I can make something of X and I can make something of X plus 100 also. Now it depends how I balance that X or X plus 100 as what expression I want to give to the consumer. So that's where the designers and the costs, I believe, are very, very strongly linked. I think I skipped one slide, right? I mean, these are obvious things you've been hearing the whole day. Seamlessness, collaboration, cost rectification. This is a case study. I thought I should present a lot more, but I think I've presented a lot today. So I will take only one format. This format is called the food hall. You are aware about food hall? Shit. Okay. So food hall is basically targeted to the top 5% of the Indian diaspora. It's not like Big Bazaar. It's really on the top level. It's the celebration of food coming to a global standard. We looked at parallels across the world. We thought of another brand called Eataly, E-A-T-E-L-Y. Eataly and now food hall. We thrive on interaction, design for interaction, design for experience, design for people trying to come in, touch the product, talk about the product, which means your entire ergonomics has to be built around that, right? At the same time, since it's for the top 5%, we cannot expect a touch me not store. We cannot expect a snooty environment. The environment still has to be friendly. So that balancing of, attracting, and I'm saying I'm not giving gas on this, Kareena Kapoor or a Shahid Kapoor or the other Khans who've come into food hall Bandra, which is this store, is really to say it touches their sensibility, but at the same time it also touches a couple of levels below that kind of customer, economic customer, his sensitivity also. So these are the 4 things which we linked together: technology, people, business, and finance. We always start with fuzziness, and we are very, very comfortable with fuzziness. We start with sketches, we sit around a big table, we make hundreds of sketches, references. We start coming into ideas and scenarios. Scenarios are basically saying, what if I do this, what would happen? So what if I create a corner like that? What if I create a table right in the center? What if I put a tree inside the store? Things like that. To certain more defined expressions, to a clearer plan. This is a stage. In fact, a couple of stages before this, the Revit enters, right? The Revit enters very subconsciously into the system to very precise detailing. That's another model because I could not find the food hall Revit, so I took the liberty of putting an FBB Revit on that. So you might think, what is he showing and why is it different? To detailing of every section. Retail, the difference between what you saw from my architect friend Amin, right? What you saw with him was very large infrastructure. So you see buildings. Here, you're actually seeing each and every shelf, because each and every shelf is giving you business. Each and every shelf is stocking some brand, and that brand's livelihood depends on that shelf. That is why we have people who want to get into retail have to understand micro detailing, micromanagement. The checkouts. So we took one store. It's a very squiggly. I was not convinced, but my team said, you put the presentation. It's a walkthrough through FBB store. Okay. So it talks about tables, the walls, the hangers, which means each and everything has to be input into the data of Revit, into the library of Revit. And then we get into individual BOQs. Our vendors are linked to it. So this particular vendor is in China. The moment we link the BOQ to it. So the designer is accountable from concept to BOQ. The BOQ is what goes to the supplier. This is what food hall is right now. Okay. We call it it's a four level. It's the biggest gourmet food store in the country. We've got hydroponics, we've got winery, we've got meat, we've got, whatever you can. We've even got a kitchen studio. We've got a large, fairly decent sized bakery. It's in the heart of Bandra, Bombay, Mumbai. We've got the nuts, a restaurant on the top, an Italian restaurant with a bar, a kitchen studio where the customers are taught how to cook. There are chefs who are called and they are taught. So a fairly decent infrastructure kind of a project. We've got a coffee lab. You've got a live coffee roasting machine inside. You get fresh brewed and roasted and churned out coffee. We've got a house of tea, which is our own brand. The tea costs about 10,000 to 15,000 rupees, some of those jars, small jars. This is where we are across the formats with Revit. Uh, the interesting part is that we've got 34 people who are designers, but now these 34 people influence 1,000 people. And these 1,000 people are generally the leadership. I'm not talking about the third or fourth line or the second line. I'm talking about CEOs, operation heads, and the likes. So that, I think, was quite a bit of a benefit for us. We've done about 78 projects. These are most of the Big Bazaar stores. We've got a library of almost about 20,000. This keeps on increasing. The time we've saved after Revit, now when we were going through the process of Revit, it was a big struggle. The designers someday would say, my stomach is aching. Some designer would say, I can't come. So there was always this problem of trying to bring the designer and keep them motivated. But now the designer, when he sees in the flashback and he's properly learned, of course his market value has gone up. So it's a little hard thing for us to retain him now. But while we are doing that, he gets very satisfied by the fact that, one, he's talking to the leadership. Second, he's managed so many projects through this medium. We could have done it through AutoCAD, but maybe not so satisfactory. And last, the time saved, he's saving almost 15 to 20%. So parallelly, we were linking it with one project with KPMG, where we said, if we can reduce the time, a Big Bazaar time earlier was about 90 days, we wanted to get it down to about 45, 50 days. So Revit is helping us in doing that, because we feel if we input the time at the right stage, I think the output is purely a time motion study. Right? This is where we wanted to do. And of course, 10% cost saved. Now, 10% cost saved means if we do a worth 1,000, 1,500 crore of capex in a year as a group, 10% is a fairly large sum. Some flip sides, they always come with a flip side. There's always a second side of the coin. Design changes. This is one major problem for us right now, because when we get into design, we get into every component of furniture. Now, imagine a small component being redesigned with a supplier A, and then you go to a supplier B who's got a different engineering, and you've got to change it all over again. So this seems to be a bit of a problem for us. We are hoping that if Revit can, in some way, I don't know which way, in some way, sort of bring these suppliers into the ecosystem, because this problem is going to be there, not just for us as retailers, but any retailer. Right? And retail in India is still a fragmented lot. I mean, organized retail is about 7-8% of the whole. Right? So when we look at a $12,000 billion economy of retail, formal retail or organized retail is only 7 to 8% of that. So there is a need to get the other vendor partners involved. And the same thing is said here. This is what my aim is. Right? It's a designer's sweet spot which we want to create. We want designers to be in the center. We want the architects to be in the center. Right? Architecture, I think, is a wonderful field because it gives you a sense of not just physical, but also the cultural part, also the social part. So if the architect sits right in the center, data empathy is something which the architects will have to learn. They will have to know about it. Second, as I said, social science and behavioral psychology. In retail, it's all about social science. It's all about, we used to always say we want to do an Indianized store. But for food hall, we said no. We want to do a store which looks like a store opened in Paris. So there was a big difference in the way we looked at the consumer, because a much more global consumer. So the social science behavioral part, we have our inbuilt or in-house anthropology unit, which brings in all the data, qualitative data into the system. Technical understanding, of course, we've all heard technical throughout the day. I don't need to repeat that, right? And creative, disruptive idea, because now, if you go to any store, most of the stores, they look the same. You remove a brand name or the main hoarding from outside, you will not know which store you've entered. So tomorrow's retail or today's retail has to be delivered on a differential experience. Not just experience, but differential experience, which means at some stage, it's already happening in US, the media, the retail, the entertainment, gaming, everything's going to merge. Right? So imagine a store tomorrow where you've entered and you are actually playing in the store while you are buying. And food hall to a certain extent has managed to do that. People come inside, subconsciously they want to have a cup of coffee. Subconsciously, while they're having a cup of coffee, they look at something else, they want to buy that. Then they start talking. So things like those with the technology will play a huge, huge role in retail. And I think we, as Indian retail, we are at a very, very basic stage right now. So when we say technology in retail, most of the guys said LED screens. We were trying to move ahead of that. We are also hoping that we move from this to that. Now, the first one we used earlier, we've started using like a site measurement data. This is all about assimilation of data. If I get my data right, I need two kinds of data if I have to design. Data number one, physical. What's the site all about? Height, width, beams, construction, limitations, government rules, etc. And data number two, market. Who's my customer? What is the profile? What's the psychography? What's the social aspect of the customer? What's been my catchment business all about? If I get that data as a designer and I inculcate that together, right, what I come around is with a broad process. So I get all the data, which is construction, catchment, category, product insight and business, the IRR, which is the return model, and the social and cultural insight, which I term as qualitative and quantitative. I start my data manipulation in that. Now, data manipulation is a stage where I involve as many people on the table as possible, because that's also a stage where you are actually inculcating certain directions, at the same time, certain decisions. And finally, all that sort of converges into a design huddle. This is where things start materializing. And from that, we don't do this, but I'm wishing we hope to do this. I saw a lot of presentations today, and I'm hoping in some way we can do a very simple breakthrough into this. Right? I don't want my designer to sit 8 hours a day and spend 4 hours in doing things which are so rudimentary that it actually can be done by the AI. I don't need him to do that, right? I want him to think about creativity. I want him to think about a disruptive idea. I want him to think about sociology. I want him to think about psychology, philosophy, because those are the things which ultimately matter to a human being, right? So we want intuitive thinking, which is a designer's thinking, and the algorithmic modeling. So sorry about this. So sorry about this. This is quite a tongue twister. Maybe I'll call it algo. So it reduces human influence. It replaces repetitive and rudimentary tasks. This is my biggest worry right now. If I've got 35 people and I take out the rudimentary task, I can actually take out 30% of the time. And I wish I don't waste the 30% of their valuable time and the organization's time. And most important, the human time, right? I keep on telling my team, you're going to spend anywhere from 5 years to 10 years in this company, which means maybe 1/6 or 1/7 of your lifetime. If you keep on doing such stuff, which anybody can do, then you're actually wasting quite a portion of your life, right? So predictive insights, if I have my AI on, if I know my data analysis is right, there are certain decisions which the data should automatically give me. I should not be getting into that and wasting my time. Right? Multiple choices in a short duration, which means I have a sense of variety, which we saw in the couple of presentations. I have a sense of variety spread on the table, and I can pick up my variety from there, which most suits me. Iterative and agile, that is why iterative and agile, and autonomous execution and frees up the mundane task. Now, when I make this, I would love to have something which basically gets into VR, where I can get what I have collaborated with a group of people together to show the same set of people who are not from design how they would feel about it. And I'm using the word feel because most of the times the feel only comes once you are inside a space. Otherwise, you only see. A part of your rationality is always on when you see. But when you feel, your rationality gets switched off. And shoppers, they feel. Right? You might come with a shopping list, how many times you've gone inside, and you come out with 5 more things. Right? Because the feel has overtaken you. And that's the power of physical retail. Right? And of course, you must have heard also about this word called phygital, right? Physical and digital. So that's something which we are exploring right now. But I would love to have this kind of AR, VR effect to be shown to my group CEO, to my sales staff, that whole along entire length. And imagine the amount of money it would save, because if I'm able to make a decision at this stage, I have not put a single brick on the site. So I end my subject by saying design is intelligence made visible. That's my only definition of design. If my intelligence can be made more visible, and Revit in some way has helped us to do that. Thank you.